they own that data, and oftentimes they're not going to want to give up that data to the DC, right? So we're having to duplicate that information on our end. So, and everyone's back. Welcome back, everyone.
Oh man, we were supposed to get, have a long discussion and then not realize that everybody's here, and then we come back. But I guess we're past that now. Last time. All right, everyone say cheese, cheese. All right, you guys look beautiful. All right, I'm gonna get rid of that view. That was a weird view. Remember that one time I had everybody present as moderators in that view? That was really distracting. All right, let's get started. Work, huh? Yeah, Greg, good thing you weren't part of that one. And Sid, I apologize because I remember you were. So we will again wrap up real quickly with our new delegate updates. Some upcoming events and activities, as well as overview of the February summit, and then our roundtable recaps. So I did see Chris was in our reality cap, or I think the dark data conversation. I saw Dan was on, providing some great comments in our RFI conversation from eBuilder. And if you hadn't heard the news yet, we are very, very excited to welcome Trimble as a ambassador member. Let's just stop it. Like, get a little round of applause for everyone. This is I think a big important step for a lot of folks, specifically Benjamin, who's on the call, but really awesome to have them involved, have everybody kind of push in the same direction for establishing what are those key data points at RFI submittals, change orders, reality capture, cost reporting, all this fun stuff that we're doing. So Chris, Dan, John, Trimble family, welcome in, and thank you guys for joining in our mission and vision. And really looking forward to continuing to work together. And actually, Chris, since you are here, do you want to say anything? Not to put you on the spot.
No,
or he might have left. Oh, there you are. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything grand to say, but we're really happy to be part of the group. And I know that Nathan, you and I talked a few weeks ago about, Trimble was part of the group and had a little lapse in our participation. And I think the dots connected really quickly, specifically with Dan Connery. Who was also, I think, in talks with you and really wanted to be part of this group. So really happy to be part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. All right, moving on and again, just one last final thank you to everyone. Again, I believe we had 6 new technology members this year. We had 4 new in the AEC and 3 new collaboration partners join. So thanks to all of our new folks. I saw David's on with Pipe Server. I saw Jim there with Sub HQ, a lot of great folks that are fighting the good fight from these different perspectives. And thank you for your support. So let's go ahead and move into our first conversation in the big room, digitalization with Project-Centric RFIs. You would not have known that this was Greg's first time moderating. He was a rock star in there, controlling all of our group as we talked about this idea of eliminating these contractual barriers, the contractual requirements that are really at the root of our challenges with redundancy in RFIs in ways that address this problem of taking that ownership from an individual stakeholder and looking at more of like a project-centric gateway or hub in the center of that CDX. So that ultimately each of those different stakeholders, we had owner, architect, contractor, trade contractor, to look at submitting, again, exactly that information that they need and nothing more, so that we're not having that redundant duplicate entry. So had a very lively conversation with Benjamin, Caitlin, Nick, and Jeffrey. But Gregory, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you guys concluded with in the discussion?
It was such a beautiful 70 minutes. It really was. It started off early on around a conversation around ownership, and ownership kind of came in 2 flavors, right? It was kind of that ball and court ownership of an RFI, like who is in charge of responding to that RFI, and whose responsibility is it at that point, and then the ownership of the data, right? Like what are the legal requirements around retaining the data? Who's responsible for those legal requirements? So a lot of conversation early on about ownership. And then we kind of got to like, well, how are we going to skin this cat, right? So it was, are we going to go down this API-based architecture, or do we need to go down a model-based architecture? And there was a lot of conversation around that. And then I really like this thread at the end that we had is like, we are, in these conversations, when you get 40 people in a room, right, we're trying to boil this ocean, right? And everyone has an opinion about like how this is going to be really challenging, or how we should do it this one way, or we need to consider this one thing. And these are all super valid considerations, right? But the idea of starting small, proposing something, making something, putting it out there for people to use, play with, and start giving feedback on is, I think, this really important idea, right? And so the question is like, how do we take that step, that first step into this project-centric RFI, and start getting people to use it, to start getting some miles on it, and then continuing to adjust and change and make it better as time goes on.
The proverbial chicken and the egg discussion. It was a good one though, but I think just really set up that conversation for February around project-centric RFIs, and just that it doesn't. I mean, we'll be talking about this for hopefully not decades, but again, we are no shortage on content to discuss, and the better we can frame those discussions to really understand all that context, get rid of the what ifs and the it depends, and start moving things forward. Awesome conversation. So great job, Greg, and everyone. Thank you. Moving forward, upcoming events. There are 2 events on the radar coming up the next month or two. The MEP Innovation Conference. You should have probably seen a bunch of social posts from Travis and Trent and Jonathan and myself, a lot of the construction dorks that will all be down in Florida, January 24th to the 26th with MCAA, NECA, and SMACTA. It's great that those 3 organizations representing the trades are getting together to recognize that they can share knowledge, share opportunities, and really excited to see and bring some of our ideas down there to that broader group and see where those discussions lead. So we'll have information, the links on how to register for that, as well as the Geo Week is coming up. And I believe, Josh, I know you'll be out here representing USIBD, and some other folks will be in Denver in the beginning of February. So this will be a much larger kind of expo conference style for those who've been to the AEC Next in the past. CPC will not have a large presence, but we will be there talking about the CDX and how it works within the world of geo and kind of reality capture. So certainly Dustin and I will be there. And if anyone else is planning to attend, definitely reach out so we can make sure and all connect out there.
We are currently looking for speakers as well. We've got a few spots to fill. So if you have any interest about talking about anything building documentation, I'm speaking specifically for the USIBD Symposium, which is co-located at this event. But if you're interested, we're looking for folks. So hit me up on LinkedIn or go to USIBD.org.
Or even better, if you can find that link for the form, and before the end of it, throw it in the chat, because I'm sure there's some folks that would love to submit and present at that.
Yeah, I have that.
Thank you, Josh. And actually, speaking of your conversation, let's dive right into reality capture. And I feel like this was my fault that I picked a really crappy title for what I'm sure was a really engaging conversation. So thank you to those who did join that conversation, and excited to see kind of where things went, because I know, Josh, in our discussions, there's a ton of parallels in the efforts that USIBD is doing towards building standards for, again, building documentation. And so drawing parallels between those efforts to develop define standards, define reporting standards, and really ultimately achieve this goal of aligning and finding value in the standard categories that would describe those different reality capture applications, and really looking at the application and how that application fits within the use case, so that we've got all these different terms of reality capture tools that have certain software applications, and then those use cases provide different deliverables. So a lot of these kind of words that, again, we're all trying to make sense of and gain some clarity so we can start to scale as the industry, and again, get to those industry level benchmarks for level of accuracy and these other performance-based benchmark standards. So without further ado, Dustin, why don't you take it away and tell us what ground you guys covered in the breakout?
Sure. I think we ended up sharing a bunch of war stories and examples of how things have worked and how it's hard to show how they work, but no issues arose because we did do the work ahead of time. I think we touched on basically that construction is a really complicated process, and much like when you're trying to integrate like the VDC process, we drew a lot of parallels between the adoption of like BIM and VDC and how reality capture is now being coming of age and being integrated into that VDC environment. But as you touched on, just like with BIM and VDC, Penn State came out with a great guide early on, and that gave like some common use cases, some common vocabulary, and I think it really helped people get on the same page. And I think a lot of what we're doing right now is like with the LOA, so that's like creating some standards for accuracy. We're creating some standardization as well, and so combining all these frameworks into something that's more digestible, that is simple on the face, but then you can drill down into and get some explanation of why maybe some of those use cases make sense for your specific type of project. That was the meat of it. And then Nicholas had a really good piece at the end, which was like projects that seem to be repeating themselves and have really good feedback loops seem to be the projects that are going the best, because obviously good data creates better projects in the future.
Go ahead, Josh.
Part of his point as well was that you have these owners that are recognizing repeat scenarios, or we've been in this spot before where we have a TI and we have a lot of the same subs. Like what went well, what didn't go well, like what are we improving, and what technologies out there. And Dustin hit the nail on the head. There's a few pieces that I think are part of a bigger puzzle that the CPC has worked on, the USIBD has worked on, some of the stuff that some of the big clients and even DPR and some other folks have worked on to figure out certain bits and pieces of it. And I think if we can get aligned on, in a similar way that the BIM world got aligned on, well, you can use it for this, and if you do that, here's the workflow, here's what your output can be expected, and we have those parts and pieces in the level of accuracy spec by the USIBD, by what CPC has done with how they're evaluating hardware for the use case specifically, or technology in the process, evaluating that for the use case. And then how we did a really deep dive at DPR to figure out use cases and objectives. How can I have a category of use cases for reality capture and some of these other technologies that get me from not thinking about the technology that we're going to use, but think about what's the situation, what's the problem, and what's my objective, right? And then work into what technology do I need to solve those problems. I'm so tired of people talking about, well, I need laser scanning. Well, for what? There's 1,000 uses, right? So it's getting away from starting with the tech focus and get to use case and objective, and what are we trying to do with it? What problem are we trying to solve? And I think if we start combining those two things and say, well, level of accuracy is the way that we start talking about things that we hand over, like this is accurate to this level. This is, this is how I'm, describing it. This is how I verified it, et cetera, et cetera. We have a start and a finish, and there's probably a whole bunch of stuff to fill in the gaps, but definitely like the direction that we're heading.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like all the work that you're doing, through the DPR perspective is sort of in effort towards a larger USB IBD, like, take it on the perspective of where you're using it today, and then kind of say, all right, how can we scale this broader in a more agnostic sense, so that the way an owner looks at it is the same as the way a trade looks at it, same as, or they may look at it different, but at least it's like a common framework for it. So I was very encouraged by looking at the document that you had shared and that's in the recording for those who watch the YouTube later, that have those 5 steps that really, like, the first 2 are essentially like your planning and your strategy. And then the execution is broken down into what connecting and processing, and then the integrate portion of it. And that aligns very well with our past discussions around understanding, what is that capture activity, what is the post-processing activity, and then what is that ultimate deliverable that they require. So awesome that we're getting that alignment and moving these things forward one step at a time. Cool. All right. So let's wrap things up here. I'm going to spend a minute here talking about what is going to be happening up in February 23rd to 25th here in Denver. So these conversations that you heard here today between reality capture, RFIs, document control, and just general data loss across the supply chain make up the different topics that we are in the process of confirming. Currently have 5 out of 10 confirmed, but we will be bringing, again, up to 100 folks together. All the folks you see here, kind of that who's who, but strategically placing folks on teams so that we have contractor and trade contractor and surety and designer perspectives and the technology solutions that sort of partner with those individual stakeholders, so that we can have very meaningful, very productive conversations around what is that chicken or egg conversation, and can we get some consensus on some actual near-term next steps in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And so that's really the overall objective of what we want to do over these 3 days, a day and a half of hard kind of intensive work, followed by a networking day where we all get to enjoy all the hard work that we have put in. So you can see here the different topics that have been confirmed. That centralized project RFI governance, very similar to or a continuation of the conversation Greg was leading today. We had last time a really great conversation that Kelly led around the MVP fabrication component supply chains. We'll be continuing that one with the help of Evolve MEP. The acceptance criteria for design document packages, that's really focused on that kind of initial receipt of a first design or drawing package that would come from a designer kind of pre-bid or pre-permit. And then again, that's presented by Ignite. And then that's separate from the design change notification protocols, which is really looking at after we have that permit, after we've got a current set of drawings set up, how do we manage bulletins and ASIs and all the kind of change management side of it. So excited to really dig in and kind of compare the similarities and differences between each of those 2 different groups. And then the last one, rapid production tracking value proposition, is presented by Struction Site. So we're going to be bringing together a lot of really what is so close to being possible today of model-based production schedule information that can be ported in and compared against Smart Track or other 360 photo production tracking capabilities to then spit out what got done or quality comparisons and other things for downstream uses. So it should be an interesting one to see where that discussion gets to. But again, this is only half of the potential conversations and topics that will be confirmed. Excited to confirm the rest of those 5, make those announcements, and get all of our industry and other folks signed up to fill in those individual stakeholder positions to make sure that we have the most fruitful and productive conversations with the time that we have allotted. All right. So I won't go into too much detail on the agenda itself, but again, over that day and a half, we'll go through our kind of traditional digest, debate, decide, and deliver format. You'll learn a lot more about the CDX terminology and language that, frankly, we've been developing ourselves, but now feel like we've got a good hold on it. So we want to share that with this group and get everybody comfortable with it. And ultimately deliver what will be a white paper or different white papers for each topic that are able to really get the word out, get more awareness and kind of more consistent language around what are these challenges that we're facing, who is out there solving them, and who are the other stakeholders and players that need to be involved in order to truly solve the problem on a macro level. So should provide some great content for folks when you do encounter those situations with owners or clients, whoever, where you're like, man, I wish I had something to make that point to them that they don't fully understand. And hopefully these reports will be written in a way that helps those folks better understand the nuance of the complexity and the shared pains that we're dealing with. So that was fast. I apologize, but let's take it on to supply chain and talk about dark data and sort of the challenges and the costs associated with it. Sid led this discussion with Tanis and Anil, And they talked about, again, how might we identify really what dark data is. It was a new term for me until Tanis sort of informed me about it, and where really understanding where it is generated as we look at construction's example of dark data, and do that in ways that recognize that the level of darkness or level of kind of disconnect is really dependent upon that stakeholder's perspective along that supply chain. And we're going to want to do that so that we connect each stakeholder with the data they value when they need it, and without that recreation or that redundancy, which seems to be a redundant theme, no pun intended. So again, Tanis and Anil, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And Sid, why don't you go and take it away?
Yeah, I think it was one of my favorite sessions. We talked about dark data, learned about everybody in the roundtable said, yes, there's around us, above me, and it's everybody. We talked about what kind of dark data is, the cost of collecting dark data. Then we also talked about how do we try to solve this problem. You know, there were brainstorming ideas about chief data officers. A lot of construction companies are having that roles now, but are they there yet, or they're just focusing on operations and business metrics? Then we talked about, should we start looking at project level organization or organization level? You know, there was 3 of the members said, let's start a project. Some said project won't work, it's too silo. So we had good discussion on that. And Darren had a good, you know, he thought that systems would, there's a lot of information lying, but until we have a value of it, there's no point of collecting it. A lot of good insights on that. We defined terms and orphan data. We looked at IoTs collecting data. What are we doing with that? Then we talked about lean concept, like are we taking the time walking the field, talking with the engineers, MEP designers, project managers, really understanding what they do, or we're just taking the orders from the top and working and collecting data. That was a good concept there. And I think overall, great conversation. I have a lot of learnings, you know, something when I talked to the next leader and said, what is your dark data? Do you really realize that you're forcing your organizations to collect this data and not utilizing value of it? So definitely a lot of learnings around that. And then we talked about culturally, it's a short-term versus long-term view. When you're in a project, you're looking at short-term horizon. I don't need that data. I don't care about data, but you keep piling it up unknowingly. And then you start losing this. A lot of good discussions. I really enjoyed Tanis and Anil for bringing great perspectives. And overall, the group was fantastic today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sid. And yeah, really looking forward to I think, just seeing that simulation of all these different conversations. And I feel like I'm going to start using dark data more, because I feel like my only equivalent of that would be poor interoperability. Like there's nothing that rolls off the tongue to describe what dark data is. So if nothing else, I really like that it's just, yeah, it's an easy way to describe this very complicated shared pain that we're all feeling. Very cool. All right, let's take ourselves home here. So again, all the past recordings as well as future recordings will go up onto the CPC YouTube channel. On most all of them, we do take the time to actually put in timestamps, which creates little chapters, if you've seen, are pretty cool to jump through kind of the different conversations for those that don't have a full 70 minutes to listen through these. But they are, again, very worthwhile conversations. Great a way to get this industry consensus that we do need. So definitely remind folks that have not participated in these, they can check those out there. Definitely want to learn, you know, what new topics we're not talking about that we should be. So there's a link there on the webpage to submit new topics. And again, you can just email me as well, nathan@constructionprogress.org. But I do want to, again, thank everyone. It's been a crazy and way too fast year, but excited about all the activities that we've got planned for next year. I think a lot of folks have some very big, audacious interoperability and innovation initiatives that we're looking to be able to support. And some of them maybe also be cultural initiatives too, not just technology innovation. So we will be, again, as I mentioned earlier, doing our inclusion and diversity conversation as a virtual roundtable webinar, similar to how we did the mental health webinar in September. So do look for that invite to come out. We'll be doing that event in mid-January. And otherwise, we'll be getting everyone ready and getting folks signed up to meet in Denver and solve some shared pains and get to hang out with everyone. And so I will stop sharing the screen so we can all wave goodbye and say thank you. And so with that, Nick, Caitlin, Nicole, Darren, everybody, thank you all so much. I feel like I did a horrible job promoting this time, but yet everybody still shows up. So thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
We'll all talk next time. Have a great,
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Great holidays. Have a good new year.